Hey guys, it's Joshua Reviews. And guys, today we're going to be checking out an interesting movie. A movie that just came out last month. Well, yeah, last month in September. Okay, so Night of the Reaper. This was a film that I saw the trailer for and thought, that looks pretty cool. I'm going to check that out. One thing I want to mention, Halloween is more of a backdrop in this movie, which is a little disappointing, but just want to get that out of the way. Kind of realized that early on, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to check this out because this is obviously heavily inspired by the original Halloween. So put that out of the way. Night of the Reaper. So Night of the Reaper, it is about this killer in a skull mask and killing babysitters, or I think, yeah, it's just killing random people. But in particular, we're following this babysitter, and she is looking after the sheriff's kid, and she believes that someone is stalking her and attempting to kill her, and she believes it's the Night Ripper or whatever. Meanwhile, the sheriff is getting mysterious packages and receiving VHS tapes of the Night Ripper's murders, and he's trying to solve the murder case and trying to figure out like what's going on, who's doing it, and is the killer going to strike again? And meanwhile, we cut back and forth between the two stories. Anyways, I like the concept. I thought the story was cool. I was like, yes, I'm on board with this. I think there are parts of the story that take a little bit, it takes a while to get going. I want to point this out. The opening or the introduction to the movie is very, I want to say heavily inspired by Halloween Ends, but I like that. I like the direction they took the opening because it builds a lot of suspense. It gets attached to the characters. And that's one thing I did like about this movie was the characters. You really feel for them. You want them to figure out what's going on, and the killer's design is really cool, if not a little generic, but I like that about it. Sometimes I just like a generic looking serial killer, you know, it's a slasher. But I want to point this out. This is not your typical slasher. This is a slasher with a twist, and I'm not going to spoil the twist because it's actually pretty cool. I'm not going to say anything on that, but I will say that the twist is pretty fucking rad. So we keep cutting between the sheriff trying to figure out who's doing the killings, why is he getting these tapes. And I would say for about 70% of the time I was on board. The other 30%, I think it does kind of take a while for it to kind of like get going. And you do start to kind of question like whether or not this really adds anything to the story. Of course, you have the very end where things are revealed as to what's going on, and it is worth it. But if you guys have seen the movie House of the Devil or House with the Devil, I forget what specifically what it's called, but or maybe it's House of the Devil. It is a very slow moving movie, and I'm not gonna lie, there are parts in this movie that are pretty slow. It's not boring, but it is slow. Not a lot of kills, not a lot of action, not a lot of like, you know, like, whoa, a lot of stuff going on. It takes its time building the characters, kind of getting you familiar with the world that they're in, and or, you know, the lore and with the stuff with the killer. So they really kind of add on to that. And so there's this mystery that's being built that I actually really appreciate. I kind of liked how it reminded me a lot of the original Halloween, how when you watch the original Halloween, part of what makes that movie so special is that you are following these realistic characters and you're getting to know them, and it helps because they act like real people. So you get involved with what they're doing and what's going on, even though it doesn't seem major or important. But then you realize like everything that they're doing plays into a factor as like what's gonna happen and be the end result of their mundane everyday life. You know, that I don't know if that makes sense, but I really like how they took their time with like establishing the characters and what they're doing. Like the main girl, I'm awful with names. But the main girl who's babysitting the sheriff's kid, through really good dialogue, you really get to know like what they're feeling, what their emotions are, who these characters are, what's going on. And I would say that there is a point during the movie where you kind of wonder if like, okay, where is this going? Because there's not a lot of like kills, there's not a lot of like action, but it worked for me and I was on board. I wanted to see where it would go because the mystery is interesting. I would say it's it's those last like 25, 30 minutes of the movie that really like pay off because you're like, whoa, that was really cool. And I'll be honest, this movie subverted my expectations. I thought it was going to go one direction and it pulled a fast one. I do have some issues with this movie, but for the most part, I think it's a solid slasher flick. I think my first gripe is that, yeah, like I said in the opening, the Halloween feel of this movie is honestly a backdrop. It really doesn't play any factor into the. In fact, you could totally make this take place on any other night, and it wouldn't add anything. So the whole Halloween thing really just kind of felt like a backdrop, which I felt like was missing because this is very heavily inspired by Halloween. So I kept thinking, okay, when are they gonna, kind of continue that fall, October atmosphere? You don't really get that. There's no pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns. You see some decorations in the background here and there, but it really is a backdrop. There's nothing to it. It's not like, why this night in particular? It's just kind of like, it's just an October night. So that was a little disappointing, especially since I'm reviewing this for Halloween, but whatever. The other issue too is that I think there are a little too many red herrings, which, when you're building a mystery that's expected, but I think that there are too many scenes that are kind of there to lead you like astray. And then I really like the twist. I think the twist was cool and I think it was worth it, but there are going to be some people who watch this movie and just aren't into it. They think it's going to be a little too convoluted. And they're going to think that like, oh, this is stupid. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't a typical or generic slasher, which I appreciated, but I am well aware that it is hard to do something original like this because you want to pay tribute to, the slasher genre and, try to implement as much, like, for example, I love Hellfest, right? That's one of my favorite October Halloween movies. But one of the criticisms that I hear a lot of people give it, and it's a genuine criticism, is that it is very generic and formulaic. There's nothing really new that's being added. It's just a typical slasher. You can go watch Chris Stuckman's review because I think he explains it pretty well, even though I disagree with him respectfully on, because I enjoy the movie. I acknowledge for what it is and I enjoy it, but Hellfest, it's generic and it's a generic fun movie. There is a difference. You can be generic and fun and generic and lazy and boring. This movie is not any of those. It actually subverted my expectations with the twist, but I feel like people will either really like that or they'll really dislike it. People will probably go, wow, that was really fresh. That was a unique take on the slasher genre, while other people will be like, nah, I wasn't into that. I wanted something generic. I wanted something, just cliche. But, it's not to say that a generic and cliche movie can't be good or, a movie that subverts expectations can't be good either. Or it could be the very opposite and be bad because there was at one point during the twist, I was like, okay, this is a cool twist, but they could easily fuck this up. But then as it kept going, I was like, okay, they're committing, and this was solid. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, but I do think there were some red herrings, but they managed to tie it all together. But you can easily like rewatch this movie and be like, okay, now I know what they're setting up here. It's just kind of, and there are parts where it does kind of feel like filler. I will admit there are parts that are kind of like, okay, you could have cut that out and you wouldn't have really missed anything. I think for the most part, they hide it well. Like you don't really feel the pacing. It only clocks in like an hour and a half, like 1 hour, 30 minutes. So it's not that long, but there are moments where you're kind of like, okay, this could pick up a little bit, but that's more towards the middle. And the middle is kind of hard to navigate with movies. Like you got to keep your audience entertained. And I don't know, some movies just really are boring. Like it here from me firsthand. There are a lot of movies I've reviewed on this channel that I'm just like, this is fucking boring. But yeah, this was a solid film. I was surprised, despite a few criticisms I have. It was a solid good time. I enjoyed it, and the twist was worth watching. If you like movies like Halloween, House of the Devil, and other like slashers, but you're kind of like, oh, I want something unique and clever, I'd watch this. There is a solid, it is a solid time, and there is a good solid 20 to 30 minutes in the end where the twist is revealed, and it's like, whoa, that was really cool. That was really fresh. So I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a respectable B. It's debatable whether or not I would watch this again. I do think this movie could probably suffer on rewatch, but, I think for, first time watch, it was a lot of fun, and I had a good time. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, see you guys next time. Because next time, I'm going to be reviewing a special movie that's based off a short film. So stay tuned for that.